What's happening, everybody? This is Gayuka Amusa, also known as Coach G, and I'd like to welcome you to this week's episode of The Friday Fix. Now, in this week's episode, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. This week, I'm going to share with you who the world's best relationship guru is. And here's the thing, you already know him. Matter of fact, you've known him your whole life. And that's because the best relationship guru in the whole world is your inner child. Now, I know that sounds strange, and stick with me on this one as we go through this. Now, children are relationship masters. I mean, they are just masters, phenomenal masters of the fundamentals of great relationships. They have this innate ability to do the things that us adults just seem to struggle with. I mean, we trip and fumble and we just suck at it. But children just masterfully ease their way through all of these things all the time. And so what we're going to talk about in this week's episode is we're going to talk about reconnecting with your inner child and being more childlike. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand and think that we're going to talk about childish, because childish and childlike are very different from one another. I mean, there's already enough 40 and 50 and even 60 plus year old children running amok on the planet. We got enough of that already. But we're going to talk about the childlike qualities that exist in all of us that we can reconnect to really strengthen and improve our relationships. Now, when you think about the children that you've met, the children that you know, the children that are part of your life, whether they be your own children or, cousins or nieces and nephews, or even when you think back to when you were a child, what's one word that kind of comes to mind that seems to fit all of those children? When I think of that, the word that comes to mind is joy. And it comes to mind repeatedly. I mean, I just see all of these images of joy when I think about children, especially children that are aged, anywhere from 1 to 5, in this perfect age range where the world just hasn't gotten a hold of them yet. They're still their pure natural selves. And joy is the word that I think of when I think about kids in that age range. And the only time they're not in joy is when, one of their critical needs isn't being met. Maybe they're sleepy or they're hungry or they fell down and skint their knees so they got a boo-boo, or maybe they actually did a boo-boo. One of their critical needs just isn't being met. But other than that, when that's not the case, they're in this state of joy. And when you think about when adults aren't in a state of joy, I mean, there's a whole litany of reasons. I mean, maybe something bad is going on at work, or, there's trouble in your relationship, or, your favorite clothes don't fit anymore, or somebody cut you off in traffic, or they hurt your feelings, or you're not getting paid enough, or yada, yada, yada. I mean, the list goes on and on. And the thing that makes that list so much worse than it already is something I like to call the fantasy four. And the fantasy four is a cycle that, adults often use to just really make some of the challenges that we experience in everyday life just a lot worse. The first of the fantasy four is that we worry about things. We worry constantly. The second is that we self-criticize. I mean, we're like our own worst enemy in the way that we talk bad about ourselves. The third thing is that we doubt. A lot of times we doubt ourselves. We doubt the people that we care about. We, just doubt the generous nature of the universe. I mean, all kinds of things. And the last is we latch on to this fear about what might happen. And the reason I call these the fantasy four is because they're all associated with fantasy. They're not necessarily associated with truth. And the problem is that we put all of these things on auto reverse. It's like they just start to say, oh, okay. So for the young folks that might be listening to this, do you know what auto reverse is? I mean, have you ever seen one of these? Do you know what that is? No? Okay. So here's what we're going to take it back just a few seconds. Okay. And we latch on to these fears And the reason I call it the fantasy four is because they're not associated with reality. It's not associated with truth. And we start to put all of these things on repeat. And so in today's fix, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about ways to break the cycle of the fantasy four. And we're going to talk about ways that we can reconnect with your inner child. Now, as I said in the beginning, children are relationship masters. And the areas that they really exhibit the most mastery in are these. Now, the first is they ask questions, and they just have this curiosity about them where they're so interested in learning, and asking questions in relationships it's so crucial. Now, the second thing is that children are extremely present. I mean, they are all about the now. As far as children are concerned, now is the only moment there is. And I mean, they're actually right. That's all there really is now. Now, children forgive almost instantaneously. I mean, they have this innate ability. You've seen, a couple 4-year-olds playing on the playground, and all of a sudden they're fighting over a toy, and 15 seconds later, they're best friends. And not only are they best friends, they have no memory about fighting over that toy, 3 minutes ago. They don't even care. They forgive instantaneously. Children love unconditionally. I mean, the love from a child is just so pure and so all the way there. And they're so good at real-time communication, especially when something's wrong. I mean, children are able to express when something isn't right when they're experiencing that. And the last thing is that children seem to have joy and happiness as their purpose. I mean, it's not just a preference, it's like what they exist for. And they do all of these things. They flow in and out of mastery on all of these different items without fear and without self-judgment. So they're not afraid to ask questions. They're not afraid to be in the moment. They're not afraid to forgive or to love unconditionally or to communicate what's wrong when it's happening or to really be all about joy and happiness. They're not afraid of any of that, and they also don't judge themselves while they are on that journey with whatever inadequacies they bring with them. Now, in relationships, there's plenty of adult considerations to think about. There's money issues, there's physical intimacy challenges, there are roles and responsibilities, there are gender roles, there are all kinds of things, family management and household duties, and just, the list goes on and on of all these different adult issues that people have to deal with in relationships. But when you start to master these fundamental things, all of those adult things, they're just so much easier. I mean, you have the conflict resolution taken care of. You have the connection and the vulnerability issues all, just down pat because you've mastered these fundamentals. So this week's fix, what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at those 6 areas in your relationship. I want you to look at and ask yourself, how good am I at asking questions? How good am I at being present and forgiving and loving unconditionally and communicating what I'm feeling in real time? How good am I at making joy and happiness the purpose of my life, not just a preference? And how good am I at doing all of those things without being fearful or without judging myself on that journey? Now, the second thing I want you to do in this week's fix, if you can, I want you to find a way to observe some small children, and especially if they're, between the ages of 1 and 5. I want you to really take a look at and just kind of watch their behavior as they interact with one another. And the question I want you to keep in your mind while you're observing this is, what kinds of actions, what kinds of attitudes, what kinds of behavior are you witnessing that could actually benefit you in your relationship? Because again, these children are masters. So thank you so much for watching this week's episode. Until next time, this is Coach G reminding you to free your mind so your life will follow. Take care of each other, all right?